Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
I'm Jena Brown.
I'm Kevin Tumlinson.
And I'm JD Barker. Welcome to Writers Inc. So right before I jumped on here, I got some bad news. Did you guys hear about Gene Hackman?
I did.
Yeah. What
Oh,
Yeah.
happened? I saw the headline, but I was working, so I didn't have
They
a
don't know
chance to read
yet.
it. Oh my
Yeah, they
Yeah,
goodness.
haven't
they
yet.
they don't know. So I guess they responded to a wellness check or something at his house, and they found him, his wife dead, and their dog dead.
Yeah.
what?
Um,
Which sounds like carbon monoxide to me.
yeah, I mean
Oh
it's either
no.
that or a very very good hitman, but I think I'm leaning towards carbon monoxide.
Yeah. They said
Yeah.
that there's no real signs of foul play, so I doubt
Yeah.
that's it.
That's really
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Michelle Trachtenberg died, I
I
guess,
saw that
yesterday.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
too.
she was I remember her from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but she's
Same.
been in a
Yeah.
lot of stuff over the years and not very old, right? Like 30 something.
She was
39.
39, yeah, when she died. She'd had a liver transplant, so they
Huh.
think it may have been
Mm,
Uh,
complications recovering from that. Yeah.
yeah.
Harriet the Spy.
that's sad.
Yep.
Yes.
Sad day.
Okay.
Now we're all
Dads.
sad.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for that uplifting news.
Way
Ah,
to bring everybody down. I was going to talk
Uh,
about all the cool snow outside. Like this is the first winter I've been here where the snow has stuck around for, like it's been out there for a good month. But
oh,
like today it's melting. It's like 45 or
Yeah.
47 and like everything is just dripping and wet and like you can tell it's going to be gone, for fairly soon. And that kind of makes me sad. I wish the snow could stick around longer.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm good
I
with
I
snow
didn't
going
mind it.
away.
it's always fun when it melts and you think like, oh, it's gonna go away, and then it freezes, and then you just, have to try not to die every time you walk on the pavement.
Right.
All right, Kevin, what is in the news?
Well, hold on, I lost track. Okay, in the news, ElevenLabs allows authors to create AI audiobooks for free. ElevenLabs has launched 11 Reader Publishing, a service for authors to create AI narrated audiobooks for free. The service works in English only for now, but will soon be available in 32 languages. The file is created in minutes, but goes to a 3 to 7 day review process. Authors using the 11 Reader app who live in the US will be paid $1.10 per listener once the audiobook plays for at least 11 minutes. While the service is currently free, they plan to eventually launch some premium version of the app, including transactions for audiobooks distributed on the app and offering industry-leading royalty rates to provide authors with their share.
So I don't own any of my own audiobook rights other than Forsaken, and that one's kind of done right now. Because I think I've got a contract coming for that one too. So I would love to try this, but I'm not able to. So are any of you guys trying this out just to see how it works?
I'm gonna try it.
Yeah, I
Are you?
could. Let me know, Kevin. Maybe I'll try it
Yeah,
out too. I mean, it looks like if you put it on their own app, you get more perks, but I don't know if
yeah.
that's exclusive or not. Um, so we'll see because that ties into our next
Our next story,
news
yeah.
items. Surprise, surprise.
Well, what I want to do with the 11 Labs thing, I'm going to check it out. I want to see though that if it'll let me use my voice, and if it does, I'm definitely doing it. But I'm probably going to do it anyway, just because I always kind of play around with these things. But I was expecting this to happen, eventually. And this is why I think more people are going to embrace this. And here's an example. Spotify adds more AI audiobooks as we look at their payment terms. Spotify is incorporating audiobooks created using 11 Labs. Where'd that come from? AI software targeting both independent authors and major publishers. These AI generated audiobooks are clearly identified in their metadata and descriptions on Spotify. We have learned that Spotify's audiobook payment structure varies by publisher size and is based on listener engagement, with authors generally receiving royalties when a listener completes between 10 to 20% of their book. Payments are calculated monthly based on the total minutes listeners engage with the audiobook, adjusting royalties according to a discounted digital list price. Each publisher negotiates specific terms with Spotify, allowing for some flexibility in how free samples are managed before triggering payments. For instance, thresholds for when royalties begin can vary, with some publishers setting limits as low as 2% of a book listened, while others may allow up to 20% of the content to be sampled without charge, but free, or I'm sorry, but receive a higher fee.
I feel we need a whiteboard to track all of this. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, so Spotify is now doing the AI audiobooks. Is anybody else, like is Audible or Apple or any of the other platforms allowing AI narrations?
Yeah, yeah.
So I know that,
Amazon does. Like
well,
they have that.
yeah, but
Yeah.
they're only,
Their
I think they're
own.
only allowing the ones that they
Their
generate.
own.
So
Yeah.
yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that from the earlier story, that 3 to 7 day review process is kind of I don't know, a caveat or something from 11 Labs on behalf of 11 Labs because Spotify doesn't want to have to deal with quality issues, things like that. And I think that's why Amazon and Apple and others only allow their own um, audiobooks. So
So that
Yeah.
is quickly changing. I mean,
yeah,
when we have to go back maybe 6 months ago and everybody was saying, no, we're not going to do it. And now all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden everybody's starting to do it. And the people that aren't doing it are watching the people that are doing it. And they're going to see how that shakes out. And then it's, within a year, you're probably going to see AI audiobooks pretty much everywhere mixed in there with the actual narrators,
yeah,
real people. Probably with some kind of little tag on it. If you see it on Audible, AI narration or something, a little graphic will probably be there.
yeah,
I'm gonna reach out to some like real narrators, that I know, just to see if I can get somebody on the show to talk about this because I'm really curious what's going on in their world, because this is obviously impacting them quite a bit. I personally I wouldn't have trouble listening to an AI audiobook if it was nonfiction. I tend to speed those up anyway, so that narration sounds weird. I just want to get the information in my head. I don't know that I'd want it yet for a fiction book, just because it still sounds hokey, but that's evolving as fast as this is.
yeah. It's getting
Yeah.
a lot better. I mean, the ones that I've had generate, I've had audiobooks generated on like 4 different platforms now, and so they all sound different, but they all also sound pretty good. Uh, even the Amazon one, which I really had doubts was going to sound good. I mean, because it's Amazon.
Yeah.
The one from Apple, the ones that generate from Apple are frankly just incredible. I mean, they got inflection, they've got emotion in the voice, it knows the emotional cues. So it's getting better. I'm not going to say it's flawless, but the
Yeah.
thing is, there's one kind of money that businesses like this dislike, and that's money on the table. And that's what they're seeing here. They want to get that money and put it in their bank account, and so they're willing to do whatever.
Yeah.
So
Well, we don't have this in the news, but Amazon just announced the next version of Alexa, coming out, which is using AI. From a pricing standpoint, there's a charge if you're not a Prime member, and I forget what it was. I think $12 or $20 a month. But if you are a Prime member, it's going to be included, and it will work. It sounds like on every device that you've already got. So sometime in the next month, your device is going to start switching over, to the point where it can have actual conversations. I mean, if you watch their demo, like they asked it something about a dog, like who took was when was the last time the dog was taken out, and she was
yeah,
able to answer, the dog went out blah blah minutes ago. So and so took the dog out. Because the AI basically studied the video camera footage from their security
that's
system.
interesting.
That's
That's frightening.
terrifying.
So
Yeah,
Ben
that's
is
That's
terrifying.
phased
that
right
is
it's
now.
that is
terrifying and cool and creepy, like all these different things, and I'm not quite sure what I want to do
I don't
about it, other
know.
than
So,
maybe hide in my
I
office and
hate how
unplug
much
stuff.
AI, like it's everywhere. Like
yeah, it's
I
But see that's kind of the point I
unavoidable
was
now.
getting at. Like it's becoming the norm. Like if you think back, like when Blair Witch came out, the reason that took off is because we had always been, we've only seen like processed film up until that point. Highly well done film, audio, like all this stuff. All of a sudden, Blair Witch comes out and it's literally a shaky cam filmed, by an amateur, or seemed that way. And it seemed so different that we all jumped on it. But now that's kind of the norm. And I think what you're going to see happen here too, when Alexa switches over, which is in a lot of houses, people are going to get used to that voice, and they're going to
Yeah,
get used to hearing it in other places, and it's going to become as normal as anything else.
yeah,
I think that's still terrifying to me.
it
Like
is
I
terrifying. Yeah,
do not want, like I constantly turn it off. I hate that it's there. I hate that it like shows up in all your documents to write. I hate that it's like it's just it should be like fine, it's there, but like I would be
yeah,
furious if Amazon like started putting it on devices that weren't Alexa. Like I don't have an Alexa. I don't. I think the NSA is already listening to us way too much, and I do not want to make it easy for my tech nanny to come in and spy on my life.
Yeah,
So
I already get mad at my phone because every time I say something and I'll be like, seriously, and Siri will start. I'll be like, not you, shut
turn
up,
that
go away.
off.
It's like,
I mean, you can
fine.
turn it off. They still
I
can
should turn it
listen. Like,
off.
I mean, like, listen, I am not under the
So,
illusion that no one can come in and listen to these things, but why make it
yeah,
easy?
I'm gonna build
I
you a
don't know.
Faraday cage.
My
I'm gonna
life is a
send it to you,
big,
Jenna.
giant, growing stack of misinformation aimed at the alphabet agencies. That's what I'm doing.
That's
I'm putting
hilarious.
on a play every day from sun up to sundown. I'm like saying things that have nothing to do with my life right in front of it. Lean in on it.
Right, just go
Yeah.
for it.
Have you guys?
It's
This is a
Ugh.
it's all
side note, but have you guys heard about Grok introduced its voice AI thing, and
I
it has these different modes, and one of them is the naughty mode.
Oh
Oh my
no.
It's like
God.
rated R,
Oh
and
God.
I'm like, I'm going to watch our population rates decline now because
I know. Yeah, everyone's gonna
AI
have an
can talk
AI
dirty to you.
girlfriend, and it's like
Yeah.
no one's gonna leave the house, and everyone's gonna not critical thinking's gonna go out the window because they're just gonna be like, my robot will tell me if I'm hungry, and it didn't tell me I was hungry, so I guess I'm just gonna die, and that's the fate of the human population.
I
Sorry.
Fine.
don't mind that. Honestly, it's less cars on the road, right?
Well,
We need to thin the herd a little bit.
maybe this last story will give you some
Oh,
hope, Jenna.
Lord.
Thank you,
Publishing
Kevin.
cyber attacks. CPI, a significant UK printing group, experienced a cyber attack on February 7th that disrupted its operations across its 9 factories, which collectively produce around 160 million books annually. The attack has forced publishers to seek alternative printing options, even at higher costs and with availability issues, impacting stock levels and the timely availability of books. The UK literary agency, The Agency, suffered a ransomware attack by the group Residia on February 14th, causing significant IT disruptions. The attackers threatened to release stolen personal data unless a ransom was paid, prompting the agency to advise clients to monitor their accounts and emails closely as they work with IT and cybersecurity experts to determine the scope of the breach. Hachette Book Group also reported a cyber attack on Valentine's Day weekend, leading to the temporary closure of their warehouse on February 18th. This incident disrupted order processing and tracking, although critical systems like Onyx metadata feeds and billing remained operational. Normal shipping operations resumed following the closure. I have to tell you, so this kind of thing, it just kind of infuriates me. But I experimented with something a day or two ago where I asked all
Careful.
the various AIs to create an FBI profile of me,
Oh my
and
God.
it gets so much wrong that I kind of feel like it gave addresses that were never mine. It gave relatives who I have no idea if we're related. So I feel like I'd never be able to fall victim to one of
Well, that
these
is sort of
ransom
the
things.
problem, I guess, with like relying on our robot overlords is that, historically, like there is a lot of information out there
Yeah.
about people trying to use algorithms, police departments and, alphabet
Look, what I'm
agencies.
saying is
And
my
it's
misinformation process is working, is what I'm trying to say here.
okay. Well,
This
I'm
is a
just saying that
method
there is
everyone needs to use.
historical data that it gets it wrong a lot and targets the wrong people. And like there was a case of, a man who was actually arrested and I think convicted, and then it was overturned because the algorithm that said he was the prime suspect got everything wrong and he wasn't even in the area, but it identified him. And I'm just gonna say it's just terrifying. It's terrifying, and I think when everyone's just like oohing and awing, I'm like, this is not. It's the end of the world as we
It's
know it. REM had it
it,
right.
it's all fun and games till Kevin ends up at Gitmo.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not going back there again. I'll never make that mistake.
Broadcasting live from Gitmo.
Ah,
Oh
I just want to
wow.
know what is up with hacking publishing. Why? Like,
I don't know.
It's
I'd go
easy.
after
It's low
something
hanging
more
fruit.
it's
fun.
easy. Is that what it? I'm like,
Yeah.
there can't be much money in that.
Yeah, no, but what they're doing is they're systematically looking for these industries and companies that traditionally had no need for beefy cybersecurity. So it's easier to go in. Hachette has a large database of employees, authors, all executives that some of which do have money. But even if you could only squeeze like a few grand out of somebody, and
Yeah.
you did that at scale, so yeah, it's a numbers game kind of thing. And as the cybersecurity for other companies becomes more robust, and more difficult to crack, you go for the low hanging
You
fruit.
go for the like
Think
That's
that
why I did it.
documentary
I
Jenna
they
made
just
mean,
me
want
watch
to
on
disrupt
Ashley Madison.
too. That
Ashley
Ashley
Madison.
Madison was wild, but that was personal. But I think a lot of times they just want to disrupt because they don't always get the ransom. They just, like when they attack hospitals, like they shut down a lot of hospitals.
Yeah.
The Strip, actually, MGM just settled a multi-million-dollar lawsuit because they got hacked. And it completely shut down all of their properties a couple years ago for like a week, I think. Like they had to manually check guests in and like do like the whole like credit card actual, I know if you're young, but you actually used to have a little machine that you did a carbon copy of your credit card on. They had to go back to that. Like it was wild times on the Las Vegas Strip. So, but I don't think they paid the ransom. They just redid their entire uh it cost them. It just didn't cost
Cost
them.
them as
Yeah.
much, probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I
Wild.
don't know. I think they just like chaos, these hackers. That's what I think.
Sounds right.
Hi, this is JD Barker. Authors often ask me what is the best way to get my novel optioned for film or television. The truth is, there's no right or wrong way to make this happen. I've got 8 projects in the works for the folks in Hollywood, and no 2 of them came together in the same way. What I can tell you is you need to get your book in front of the decision makers, and one way to do that is with the help of our friends over at booktrib.com. Through their Books to Screen program, they'll include your novel in a special insert in Screen Daily magazine. The magazine averages 38,000 readers in print and another 76,000 readers online, all of them film and TV insiders. They also distribute copies at the Cannes Film Festival. You can't get better coverage than that. If you want to see your book on the screen, visit booktrib.com. They'll help you get it there.
All right. Speaking of chaos, JD, who is that this week?
This week we've got Steve Barry back on. He's the New York Times #1 international best-selling author of 17 Cotton Malone adventures, 5 standalone thrillers, and several works of short fiction. His books have been translated into 41 languages with over 25 million copies in 52 countries. His latest is called The Medici Return and just released on February 11th. Here he is, Steve Barry.
So let's start at the beginning. How did you get started writing?
Well, I didn't write my first word till I was 35 years old, so I got started late, which I would not recommend to people. I recommend starting a little earlier. I kind of wasted 10 years. During the 1980s, I had a little voice in my head that was telling me to write, and I didn't know what that was at the time. I didn't understand it. I now know that every writer has a little voice in their head telling them to write. They're actually born with that little voice in the head that tells them to write. Now, it doesn't tell you how to write, it doesn't tell you what to write, but it does tell you that I need you to sit down and I need you to write. But I ignored it until the summer of 1990. And when I did that, I decided at that time to write a novel. And I sat down and I wrote a book. And it took me 12 months to write it. And I wrote what I knew. Now, subsequently, I teach writing. I've taught about 3,500 students around the country in writing. And I will tell you that writing what you know is extremely bad advice. Do not write what you know. No. Instead, write what you love. If what you know and what you love are the same thing, fine. But if it's not, pick the one you love. Well, I didn't. I wrote a legal thriller. And of course, at the time in 1990, legal thrillers were really hot. That was really going high. And it was about 6 inches, 7 inches thick, which tells you how bad it was. It's not supposed to be that big. It was 170,000 words, and it was horrendous. It's a good story, just told horribly. But it's the only manuscript I kept. It's the only one I have. I've written 27, and it's the only one I've kept because it's the best thing I'll ever write in my life. And you know why? It's because I started it and I finished it.
Oh,
90% of all writers do not finish what they start, but I finished it. Well, over the course of the next 11 years, I wrote 7 more manuscripts. So I wrote 8 manuscripts over 12 years. Finally, 5 of those went to New York publishing houses. They were rejected 85 times. I made it on the 86th time, 12 years after I started, and that was The Amber Room in 2003. And now here we are 26 novels later, and I get to keep doing it. So I had a very long process to get here, but it was worth it in the end.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you've been writing 11, 12 years submitting manuscripts before you had one picked up.
Correct.
And you said you had 5 submitted to
5 went to New
big,
York houses. Yeah, they were rejected at that time, there were 17 New York publishing houses.
yeah,
Today, there are 4. So
right.
it shows you what's changed. So there are, they were rejected 85 times. I made it the 86th time, finally.
Wow. So you had an agent at that point when you're submitting,
I was
I would
fortunate
imagine.
enough to get an agent, which is incredible because getting an agent is just harder than getting a publisher.
Yeah.
But for some reason, Pam Ahern in New Orleans took me, and she stuck with me through 85 rejections. She was there all the way through. Why she stuck with me, I have no idea. She should have fired me long ago. But she told me later, she said that I just had a feeling we were going to make it one day. I thought we were going to make it. You were determined, and I wanted to be there when you did it. And so she did it, and now she gets 15% of my first 10 novels for eternity.
Yeah. So that's incredible persistence. And you were working at that time, I imagine you were
Yeah, I was a lawyer. Yeah,
as
I was
a
working as a
attorney.
lawyer full time. I would go to the office at 6:30 in the morning, and I would write from around 6:30 to about 9. And I wrote probably 13, 14 manuscripts that way. I did the first 8 books after I was published that way. No one actually saw me write a word. I was alone when I wrote. So that was the way it was until about book 9, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And so when you've got an agent, you've done 8 books, 5 of them have been rejected, you keep submitting. How do you have like the persistence or I guess the self-esteem to keep going with that
Well,
many
it wasn't
rejections?
easy. I'm not going to fool you. And I'm not a
Yeah,
Superman. I quit about 3 times during that period. But I credit the little voice in my head. The little voice would come back after a few days and say, okay, the pity party's over. Let's get back to work now. Let's go to
yeah.
work. So, and it did. It got me back. And I just kept plugging away until one day the world changed. What happened for me is the world changed. I was writing action, history, secrets, conspiracies.
Hmm.
That used to be called a spy novel. But in 1990, that genre died. When the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union collapsed, the spy novel died. And by the mid 90s, the genre was dead. And by 2000, it was cold and in the grave. And then in 2003, Da Vinci Code came out, and Da
Right.
Vinci brought the genre back, but not as a spy thriller, but as action, history, secrets, conspiracies, as an international suspense thriller. And that's what I was writing. And Random House had bought Da Vinci. They didn't realize what they had. They realized they had something special, but they didn't realize they had one of the largest selling fiction books of all time. But they were looking for stuff to go with it. And I was a Dan Brown fan long before Da Vinci Code. So mine was perfect. And I got bought to go with Dan. Dan came in spring of '03. I came in fall of '03. He gave me a wonderful blurb for my book, called it My Kind of Thriller. And the rest is kind of history. I just kept going.
That's amazing. So persistence plus a little bit of luck.
Yeah, so you got to have luck, but you make your own luck by staying in the game.
Exactly,
You make
exactly.
your own luck by staying in the game. If you want it bad enough, you stay with it. And one day you'll catch a break. And one
Yeah.
day I did. I caught a break.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've been writing for a long time. Do you remember how you found your agent? Did you go about it
I
the
did it the
regular way?
old-fashioned way. I went
Yeah,
and bought the Guide to Literary Agents, which is put out by Writer's Digest every year. It's still put out to this day. I opened it up to the non-fee paying section because you never pay an agent a fee under any
right.
circumstance. I looked them up. I saw every agent who handled my genre. It was about 400. And I did what it said. each one tells you what to do. Now, in those days, there were no electronic submissions. You had to type the letters out, you had to put them in the envelope, you had to put the synopsis if they asked for a synopsis in there, you had to do all the things it asked to do. And I did that. And out of 400, about 10 wrote back.
Wow.
And out of the 10 who wanted a little more, only one took me, which is a miracle, by the way,
Mhm.
because usually it's zero. And she took me and hung with me during 85 rejections.
So you sent postage to
Yes,
400 agents.
400 agents postage. And I remember at the time it was probably $300-400 at that point in
Yeah.
postage. I did them myself. I typed out the letters on the word processor, which was a very primitive linear word processor that worked in DAWs and the old DOS system. So it was very I did each one and I tailor made it to each one and I did what it said. Now, if people are listening to me today and they do that, you still do it that way, by the
Yeah.
way, but now you can do electronically, but follow the directions. If it says I want 10 pages, if it says I want 30 pages, don't give them 31 because the chapter ends on the next page. It's actually a test to see if you can follow directions. Follow the directions exactly as it says and send your stuff in and see what happens.
Yeah. Another lesson in persistence plus a little bit of luck. And it's a good lesson now because, people say, oh, I've been rejected by 50 agent. And I'm like, great, try another 150 and then see where you're at. So that's
Oh
a
yeah, I
great
mean
story.
50, you're not even in the
Not
game.
even in it.
You're
Yeah.
not even in the game. Yeah, you got to keep going. And if you get rejected, you got to write another manuscript and start over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You keep, that's what I kept doing. And I was teaching myself during that 12 years how to write a book a year because I knew if I ever became a commercial fiction writer, they were going to want a book a year. Now, that was back before ebooks and Amazon and all that. So in those days, you only wrote a book a year. So
Mm-hmm.
I taught myself how to do that so that when I did get bought, I was ready to go.
Yeah. Oh, that's smart. So you're ready to play, hit the ground running with that
Ready to hit
first
the ground
book.
because you write a book, it's great, but you're only as good as the last word you wrote. Now you move on to the next word.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we're at is 19 books you have published. Is this your
I have
19th book?
19 cottons, but I have 26 total now.
26
27's
total.
coming. 27 will come this July. So I have 27 novels. I've been writing 35 years, published 22 of those.
Wow.
So, but I'm on novel 27, 19 Cotton Malones.
19 Cotton Malones. And the newest one, The Medici Return, is a Cotton Malone book.
It is. It is.
Yeah. What do you love about that character? You keep bringing him back.
He's fun. He's very ordinary, and that's what makes him cool. He's like a guy next door. He has troubles. He has problems with an ex-wife, his son. He's not good with women. He's got a bookshop to run. He's got all kinds of things, but yet he gets himself into some extraordinary situations and is able to get himself out of those. So that's what I think makes him popular. He's had 19 adventures, but that shouldn't put off any readers. You do not have to read my books in order. You can pick the books up in any order you want. You can actually read this one first and go back. You won't miss anything. Nothing will change. I write them that way on purpose.
Yeah. I think that's a great strategy. Start anywhere, start with
Right.
anything any blurb that grabs your fancy.
Well, all the books deal with a different part of history, something from the past that's still relevant today. They're modern day thrillers, but each of them deals with something different. So you need to look and see what interests you.
Exactly. And do you think that that's the reason this is so popular, this series? You've kind of made him an everyman. Do you think that
That's
makes it?
exactly, I think, what it is because he's not a Daniel Craig. He's not a Marvel hero. He's a
Yeah,
guy that makes mistakes, but he can rebound from them and he can save the day. And he's been, I've been very fortunate that he's caught on and it's a brand now because the thriller genre is in decline right now. We had a 20-year run. 2023, it began its descent. Romantasy has taken over now, and it's now the hot genre.
yep.
Thrillers were the hot genre for 20 years, but not anymore. But thankfully, I have an audience and a brand, so I can continue and keep going forward, which I did not have in the 1990s, which is why I didn't get bought.
Yeah, I think the dream, right, is for you as an author to be your own brand.
Yes,
People are buying a book because your name on it.
It's a Steve Berry book. Yeah,
Yeah.
they run by Steve Berry, and that's cool. And that's what you strive for, so that your audience, that gives you worth in the publishing business. Yes.
Hmm. And so with this character, do you think that readers love him because it's easy to put themselves in their shoes?
Yeah, I
Like,
think
yeah,
so. I think it's very simple. He's not, as I said, he's not a superhero.
yeah.
He thinks like we do, he reasons like we do, but he can do extraordinary things. And I think readers identify with him. My readership's about 50-50 men and women, which is really cool.
Hmm.
So women like him and men like him. My books don't have a lot of violence. People die in the books, but only if absolutely necessary. There's nothing gratuitous about it. There's no foul language and there's no sex. So, the books are, I think the readers like them.
Yeah, that appeals to a pretty wide range. So this book, you said every book has a different historical aspect to it. Um, this one, we're going to the Vatican, looking at papal documents, 16th century
Yeah.
Italy. How did you do research for that?
I was there. I went to Tuscany. I'd never been before. And so in 2022, I went. And I went to see Florence and Siena, and then we stayed and watched the Palio. And I saw Tuscany all in there, and I said, "This is great." And while I was there, a novel found me. You don't go looking for a novel; it will never ever reveal itself. But if you can put yourself in the right situation, the idea will jump out in front of you. And your job is to recognize it when it jumps out. And so it did jump out. And I realized there was a novel here. And I put together this whole thing around the Pledge of Christ and the Pope, Julius II, and the money he borrows from the Medici, and the debt that's still owed today. And the fact that who's going to be the next Pope and the next Prime Minister of Italy hinges on the balance of Cotton finding not only the Pledge of Christ, but the last Medici. The Medici family died out in 1743. No more heirs. It went extinct. But it occurred to me, what if there was some more? So all of that is what Cotton finds himself in, and he ends up in the Palio, which is one of the greatest spectacles in the world, and he gets to ride a horse in the Palio, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Was it a bunch of things that kind of brought this novel together for
Yeah,
you, or
it was
was there one
different things.
specific thing that you're like, oh, this is it?
No, I kind of built. I saw the Medici Chapel. I saw the Duomo. Went all around Florence. I went to Siena. I saw the Palio. All that sort of built. And then one day I was driving back to the hotel in the van, and the idea hit me. I said, "There's a novel. I got it. I think I know what it is now." And the Medici Return was born.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, obviously the Medici's were a hugely influential and rich family um, when they existed. What kind of research did you do for this? Did you research while you were there, or
Yeah, I did
did
a
you do
lot
that
while
at
I was there.
home?
I actually went back another trip a
Okay.
few months later that was specifically geared to research and spent 5 days there. And I got about 200 books and brought them home. And I did a lot of work here as well. And I got my 300 to 400 sources and I went to work and I learned all about the Medici. I didn't know anything about them. I never did the first thing about the Medici. And I had to learn all about the family. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about the Palio. I didn't know anything about Florence. I had to learn all that stuff. But that's what makes it a little fun for me is that I get to learn some things I never knew.
Yeah. 300 to 400 books is a tremendous amount of books to
Every novel is 300 to 400. I don't read those books now, but I read large chunks of those books. I do. And my notes are about 6 to 8 inches tall, and I use those to write the book.
Wow. So you do that before you put
Yes, I get started 6 months before I finish the novel. Before I do the preliminary research, so that when I finish that novel, I can start the next one the next day, and I'm
wow.
ready to go. That's how I maintain a book a year.
So you're researching the next book while you're finishing the book before. So
Yes,
you're a
absolutely.
multitasker.
Researching and outlining the first 100 pages of that book.
Yeah.
There's always three in my brain at all times. Right now, I'm writing 26, researching and outlining 27, and conceptualizing 28.
Wow.
There's
That's
always three. That's the only way I can stay on the book a year schedule.
nice. Yeah, especially with the amount of research you need to do. I imagine that's
Yeah,
a
that's
way to
what
do
makes
it.
my books a little different than others is there's a huge amount because I keep my books about 90% accurate. I trip it up about 10%. There's a writer's note in the back of all of my books that tells you when that happens and how that happens.
Okay, that's nice. So how do you do that, that balance between
Well,
what's historically accurate and the suspense?
mixing information with action is the toughest thing in our genre.
Yeah.
You've got people who read our genre want information, but they don't want too much of it because we're not writing a textbook. We're writing a novel. So I have to mix it. And I'm not saying I'm great at it. I'm just saying that I'm very conscious of that mix. And I try to make sure I don't give you too much or too little. My wife, Elizabeth, is my first reader of the manuscripts, and she's an editor herself. So she has a good eye of when I have too much or too
Yeah.
little. And she
Yeah.
she keeps that straight for me.
Yeah, I don't know if you have a rule of thumb of that for that, but I read a lot of like electronic books. I read paper books too, but it's really interesting because I read all different genres to see what people highlight depending on what they're reading. And with the thrillers, it's usually the factual stuff.
Mhm. People want
Um,
that. They want those little tidbits.
yeah,
The trick is to make those tidbits relevant to what's going on.
exactly.
It's just not gratuitous information. It's important information. That's why the locales in my book become almost characters in the novel. They're just not there. They're integral to the plot.
Yeah, and I imagine you have to travel to make that happen. Have you ever done a
Hell,
book where you haven't visited the place you've written about?
two books I did. The Emperor's Tomb, I did not go to China, but I had a
Yeah.
friend of mine who did, and he brought me back a lot of pictures and answered all my questions. And then I did not go to Antarctica for the Charlemagne pursuit. Though I'm going to go to Antarctica in a couple of years. A couple of years from now, I want to go really bad. So we're going to
Yeah.
make that trip in a couple of years. But those are the two exceptions where I did not do any. I did not go to the scenes in those two books. All the rest, I've been. This one particularly, I went to everything that you see in the novel.
Yeah. So for the books where you didn't go, did you find that more difficult to
No,
write?
not
No.
really. I was able to get enough books and
Yeah.
descriptions to make it work. And he
Yeah.
had gone to China, so he was able to tell me things he smelled and saw and touched, and that helped.
Yeah. That's incredible. So yeah, Antarctica should be good. There's only a very short time you can go there, right? Though if
Yeah,
you're
you go in February.
yeah, that's it.
December, January, or February is all you can go. And so we're looking to do that. I've been wanting to do it, so I think in 27 we're going to do that.
Nice. Then we'll look forward to another Antarctica book maybe.
Well, it'd be cool. It wouldn't it? I did a pretty good run with it though in Charlemagne Pursuit, so I
Yeah.
may be able to use the locale again.
Nice. So overall, you've said that the secret to writing a thriller series is to keep everything the same but different.
Yes.
And I'm curious, what does that mean to you?
Well, every book and 19 books in a series, they all have to be the same in that you have Cotton Malone and Cassiopeia Vid and the other characters. You have action, history, secrets, conspiracies.
Yeah.
What's different is a different bad guy, different thing from history, different motivations, different so what, different uh, motivations of the bad guy. All of these things are different in each novel. So you have the same but different. And so each one fits in the series, but it also stands on its own 2 feet too. And that's what you want. If you have read the books in order, there are things you will uh, notice. But if you have not read them in order, those things will not annoy you because you'll pass right by them and they won't mean anything to you. And so that's the trick. I learned that trick from Lee Child in the Reacher series. Make them stand on their own, but every once in a while you drop a little nugget that means nothing to anyone unless you've read the other book. If you hadn't read the other book, that doesn't annoy you like there's a secret you don't know about.
Okay. So
So I'm
it's
very careful about that.
like an invisible Easter egg for people who've
Yeah,
read all
but
the way
if
through.
you have read the other books, you know what it is.
Yeah. And then
If
you're
you
an
haven't read
insider.
the other books, you go, okay, fine, that's cool, let's go and keep going forward.
Nice.
And that's the way you want it. You don't want it where they read it and go, oh, what is that, man? They know I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want.
Yeah. 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 Very nice. And I also saw that Cotton Malone is coming to television. Is this
Well,
the
there's
case?
talk about it, and there's a lot, they are, as I say all the time, they knock on the door, they stand out on the front porch, but they never come inside. So they're still out on the front porch talking to me through the door.
Yeah.
No one, I've invited them inside, but they haven't come in yet. So we'll see. We'll see if
That
that happens.
seems the way it is to go with Hollywood. You option everything and then you hurry up and you wait and
You
you
hurry
wait
up and you
and,
wait. That's
and you
right.
wait.
So we'll see. I don't look for it to ever happen, but
Yeah.
it'd be kind of cool if he came alive, but I don't see it ever happening.
Yeah. Would you want to be involved with that process or
I mean, I
would you?
don't mind helping out or answering questions or doing it, but I don't know the first thing about making TV shows.
Yeah.
I could help, a little with the script and make sure that things stay faithful to the series. I think that's what you want to do is stay faithful.
Right. While translating it to a different media. So,
Yes.
yeah. All right. Very nice. Um, can you tell us a little bit about History Matters?
Yeah, it's a foundation that my wife and I started in 2009, and we help local communities raise money for historic preservation. And we've done about 80 projects, raised about $3.5 million. We go into a community and we do a writer's workshop where we teach writing. You buy your way in with a contribution, $300. That money goes to the project. We don't charge to come, we don't charge expenses. And then, basically the writers get taught and the project gets money and it works out really well. And we've done quite a few. We have a website that's attached to my own website, steveberry.org. There's a History Matters tag in there. Just click on it. If someone has a project or something that they may want some help with, you can send us an email. And we'll see if we can help you out.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely that you don't charge for that and you just do that
No,
for
we donate our
free.
time and all to do it. That's where we've taught about 3,500 students.
Wow, that's incredible. And you also were a founding member of the International Thrillers Writers.
I was. I was one. There's about 50 founding members, and I was lucky enough to be one of those.
Yeah. How did that come about? What was the inception of that like? Because now it's a huge
That was
conference.
started in 2004 by Gail
Mhm.
Lynns and David Burrell. It's the guild of the thriller writers. I think they have over 6,000 members now. When we started it, we had us 50.
Yeah.
There was just a few of us. I served as co-president for a few years. I also served as vice president of publications for a number of years. So I did several books for International Thriller Writers. I put several books together: Thriller, Thriller 2, um, Face Off, Match Up. All those, I was the managing editor of all of those.
Wow. And the initial idea was kind of to have a guild for thriller writers. Was that kind of the idea behind it?
Yes, that was the idea, and it now has become that. And they meet every year in New York in Thriller Fest.
They do. Yeah. And it's really fun. If anyone is a thriller writer and you want to attend, well worth your time. So wonderful. Well, as we're coming to a close, I just have one final question that we like to ask everyone.
Hmm?
If you could offer one piece of advice to newer or aspiring writers, what would you say to them?
Right, right. Do not ignore the little voice in your head. Sit down and write. There's only one way to learn how to write, and that's to write. And you have to keep writing and write some more and write some more. You can eventually find some help so you can learn how to teach yourself how to write. No one can teach you how to write. There's nobody in the world that can teach you how to write, but there are people that can teach you how to teach yourself how to write. And that's what would be nice to find. I was lucky to find that. Some people who helped teach me how to teach myself how to write. And then you have to do it every single day. You have to do it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. There is no shortcut, none.
So I am curious, do you like to read about the character next door or an extraordinary character that's very different than you?
I love reading about the character next door, but only if there's that twist that they end up being extraordinary. That's the thing I love.
I think it depends on the story. Like sometimes it's really fun to read about someone who is like a complete disaster almost and like finds themselves in these extraordinary circumstances and has to figure out how to overcome them without being extraordinary themselves. And then other times it's kind of fun to have like an expert or someone who has these it really just depends on the premise, I guess, and the setup.
I've had to read about my neighbors in far too many court documents. So I prefer to go a little further down the
Right.
street for my fiction.
Too
I'm
close.
kind of the opposite. Really, I prefer actually reading. My favorite stories have always been the ones where the larger than life character has to deal with mundane everyday stuff. Like,
Huh.
imagine Cotton Malone or Robert Langdon or somebody having to, mow their lawn or, but really honestly what it is like imagine them going to like Thanksgiving dinner with their family or something. And of course something's going to happen, but when I was a kid I mean, I still read comic books, frankly, but I mean, my favorite comics were always the end of year issues, like the Christmas issue or the Thanksgiving issue or whatever. Like the X-Men are sitting around having Thanksgiving dinner, or Spider-Man's playing touch football with a bunch of punk kids in the street of New York or whatever. And for some reason, those stories always hit really close to my heart. And I think it's because we love our larger than life characters and their adventures, but seeing them being human is what connects them to us. Like we feel like that's when you start to feel like that could be us.
Yeah.
Greg Hurwitz is really good at that. He's got a
Yeah.
character that's an assassin, but he will
Yeah.
drop him in some weird situations, like an HOA meeting at his apartment building,
Right.
or a Thanksgiving dinner or something, and he makes it as awkward on paper as it, you would expect it to be. Like he really knows how to drag that out and draw it out of the reader.
Yeah. Yeah. He did awesome. Orphan X series is the one that he does that in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Um, but yeah, I love a competent character. You have to be competent or likable, one or the other.
Yeah.
If you're an everyman, be likable. If you're
Yeah.
competent, you don't have to be so likable.
I guess I like disasters trying to make it.
Disaster.
I don't really remember it kind of like MacGyver. Like, I like someone who's like we can make it out of here with
Yeah.
shoelace and a matchstick and chewing gum. And it's like insane, but it works. And he probably has competencies that I don't remember because that was a long time ago. But I don't know. I like disasters. I do like the extraordinary characters and I like the mundane situations. I like the fun, but it's all about the setup. Like, what
Yeah.
is the story and what character fits best in that story? Because sometimes an overly competent character is like, do you want them to, like, if you think they're gonna win all the time, like,
Yeah.
that's not
There's no
fun.
fun in it. That's why I've never enjoyed James Bond. Like there's not I don't care what perilous situation that guy's in. We all know he's going to, pull the stem of his watch and a parachute's going to come out or something. So there's no fun in those movies for me. I've
Well, I
never
guess
enjoyed
in
them.
those it's the people around him who suffer. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
he probably won't die, but what is he willing to sacrifice in the name of God
Yeah.
and country?
Yeah.
I think that's sort of where the James Bond character has is intriguing to some people. Like, I don't know, you probably didn't watch was it the last movie? Whatever one had Rami Malek in it. Like that one
Uh,
was actually quite interesting because he won, but he lost. And I thought that was interesting.
It was different for
Maybe I'll have to
Bond,
go
that's
give
for
it a
sure.
shot.
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
have to start at the beginning. What was the first one? Casino Royale? Was that the first Bond movie?
Don't think you have to. You can watch. I mean, they're pretty much like you
Yeah,
can
you
No.
can
get up
watch them out of
to speed
order. I've,
pretty
I've
fast.
recently rewatched all of them.
Yeah.
Casino Royale, I thought was the most realistic out of all of them, only because they did show a lot of those flaws. He did get hurt, he did suffer. But yeah, I mean, then they got a little crazy. It's the Fast and Furious, film franchise is the same thing. You watch the
Yeah.
first one, it's
Yeah.
believable, like it could
Yeah.
happen. But now they're jumping a car from one helicopter to another, across the Grand Canyon,
I missed
and
that one.
and the car doesn't get scratched. At some point
Yeah,
it
right.
gets a little out there.
Oh my gosh. Oh. The other thing that, Steve talked about was how things cycle, I guess, in the industry. He was writing spy thrillers and that was out of vogue, but then Dan Brown came along and made international suspense thrillers in vogue. Um, Sounds kind of like what's going on with romantasy right now, which is
Yeah.
other things repackaged. What do you think about that? Like with cycling, do you think the thriller novel is in a downswing at the moment? Or Are things just being repackaged? Curious to hear thoughts on that.
Well, Dan, I mean, the reason that worked so well is he kind of took the whole thing and flipped it on its head. You know, wasn't really, there was nothing like it with that, at that particular time, and that's what revitalized everything. So, I mean, I think thrillers, I mean, everything ebbs and flows. But yeah, I think if that's your world, you should keep going at it. Just try to find a slightly different angle. You know, people get bored. You know, I get bored as a reader. If I pick up a book and like, I've seen that twist before, I've seen that detective before. Like if I read another book where the police detective that's got an alcohol problem, like like I will not get through that book because like all these things have been done to death. You've got to
Yeah.
find a fresh take on it to revitalize it, not only for yourself, but in Dan's case, he revitalized an entire industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we've talked about this before. Like, no genre ever really dies. I mean, it might like not be the hottest beach read that everyone has that particular summer, but you are going to have your readers who like they don't really deviate much away from the genre they love because reading is, you know, first and foremost escapism for people, and most people don't want to risk their escapism on too many unknowns, I think. Especially if, they're not incredibly voracious readers. So when they have those precious moments, like they are going to go towards the things that are probably going to be satisfying for them, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, I mean, take a look at like Gillian Flynn, and she talks about this when we interviewed her a few years ago. If you look at Gone Girl, she had a hard time selling that book. Like her agent didn't think that worked, her publisher didn't think it would work, because nobody really understood what an unreliable narrator was, and they didn't know how readers were going to react to it.
Oh, it was so
So it's one
good.
of those things where it was either going to get she was either going to hit it out of the park or it was going to fizzle and die. But you've got to be willing to swing for it and give it a shot.
I don't think that most of these publishers really they don't they don't they don't give enough credit to the readers, man, because readers
No.
are not inexperienced with unreliable narrators. We've had plenty of uh, books even in like great literature that
Yeah, like Holden Caulfield, like
exactly that's
everybody is
exactly what I
made
was
to read
thinking.
that, right? Like,
Well,
Right.
I
yeah.
think that
Huh.
the interesting thing about Gone Girl is that, like, because what I experienced as a reader, I remember telling my husband at some point, like, it felt predictable. Like, it felt, but then it kept deviating, like, for the first half, right? And you were like, either this guy killed his wife or he didn't kill his wife. And you weren't exactly sure which one, but it felt like, you'd be convinced, like, okay, yeah, he actually did it. And so it sort of, because it I think shifted so much, it it took away that predictability, but it still felt like it was sort of predictable. But then at the end of the day, you were like, okay, I'm pretty sure I know what happened, and I don't even care if I'm right. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think that was probably
See,
what they picked up on. But publishers are a business, and the thing about
yeah,
business is they rely too much on past data
yeah.
instead of future data. And this is a problem that happens in every industry from the dawn of business, is that they get very comfortable and they go like, well, like that's not going to work because it hasn't worked before. And the thing is it's always that unexpected thing. But the unexpected thing
Yeah.
isn't unexpected if you
It's
know to look for the future thing.
it's almost like what I've noticed is there's a point at which when either a business or an individual has reached a certain level of success, they become less likely to try the new thing.
Yeah. Well, they become
Yeah.
risk adverse,
Yeah,
which is,
risk adverse.
really interesting because it's the risk that usually creates the momentum and the success. And then they don't want to do that anymore. And it happens, I mean, on individual levels, it happens on all kinds of things. So it's a very interesting phenomenon. Um, like usually people who uh like I think romantasy is a good example of this. The reason it works is because it's not quite romance and it's not quite fantasy, but it sort of takes someone outside of a genre to sort of like kick things off and to make something new again.
So who wrote the first one? Who wrote the one that knocked it all out of the park? Was it Rebecca Yarros?
That's what I
Well,
think.
that's what made it mainstream. I mean, I think Sarah J.
Sarah J.
Maas,
Maas, probably, yeah.
Maas,
Oh,
Maas,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's Maas.
Is it Maas? I don't know.
I think so.
I never heard anyone say it. I only read it. It might be Maas.
And I did hear someone, I think like her audiobook narrator or some. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think she was, but she didn't get a lot of credit for it. But she sort of like, I think, started people looking for it in a lot of ways. And like now new adult, like have you seen all the new adult for like what 15 years romance authors and readers have been begging for new adult, and
Yeah.
now that's a thing. But whoever publishes under those new things is going to be credited with starting it, but it started 15 years ago, really.
Yeah, you just couldn't
Well,
sell it. Nobody
I'm
wanted
working
no
on
Mhm.
Thrillmantasy Horror. That's the one I'm working on.
Thrillmancer?
That's a
Romantasy
joke, but
Horror.
honestly, like that's like the next big change is on somebody's computer right now. They're halfway
Yeah.
through that draft of
Mhm.
the next Dan Brown change, the next Romantasy change. It's
Yeah.
6 months to a year from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I bring out my unicorn horror, it's going to be huge. You just
That's
wait.
what I think that's it. Yeah, I can see that working.
There is so much potential for horror with unicorns.
I think
That,
there's a
that
movie
horn
coming
is
out
just sitting there
about it.
begging.
Either a movie just came out or is coming out. Oh, I'm
Oh,
gonna have to
really?
look this up,
Geez,
Chrissy, and
someone
send it
beat me
you.
to it. Of course they did.
First book, Uniscorn.
I think it has Jason Bateman in it because of course it does.
Of course it
Yeah,
does.
yeah. He's
Or-
the new hotness right now. Yeah. In terms of horror, like,
Well, he
or in
just-
terms of like being a bad guy or a villain or whatever, he's showing up everywhere.
Well, I think that this is like a horror comedy, and so like I don't know,
He would lend well
his
to that.
sense
Yeah.
of comedic timing in like the most unexpected plot, I think, is what makes him hilarious to watch. But I'll look for it and send it to you. Maybe we can watch it.
That
Watch
sounds good.
party.
I'm all in for unicorn horror. Please, listeners, send me all your unicorn horror.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
it's not, I don't think it was intended to be horror, but I will tell you that The Last Unicorn scarred an entire generation.
It did.
I remember that movie.
It did. It's such a
Yeah.
fabulous book. And if you have not read his A Fine and Private Place, I think it is equally as good. It's a very different vibe, but it's so sweet and heartbreaking. So
I can't
if you
do
want
it.
your heart broken, try that one.
Where do I sign up?
Perfect. And on that uplifting note, JD, who is up next week?
Next week, we've got Marshall Karp coming on. Marshall's a #1 New York Times bestselling author, a TV and screenwriter, documentarian, and playwright. Working with James Patterson, Marshall co-created and co-wrote the NYPD Red series. His latest novel is called Don't Tell Me How to Die and releases March 4th. Marshall Karp.
Sounds great. If you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.